Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael. We are under the palm waiting for Sister Mariana. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael. Under the palm waiting for. Sorry about that. The volume was on the other thing. Waiting for Sister Mariana to join us. Today we are going. I forgot to put in my little title here. What's the name of it? Peer review for you. So we're peer reviewing some of the thoughts that, for those who don't know, we do a lot of work. Shout out to Brother Sal at Debate Talk for you. It's a little play on words, a little play on words. And since I said we were starting at 10 o'clock, I shared the post. Feel free to share it as well as we go into this conversation. And it's not really going to be a very, very long one. It's going to be one that's looking at some of the thoughts that are forwarded in the community, some of the things that we subscribe to. Um, how valid are these? It's not necessarily personal. Um, Again, it's whatever comes across the plate, and it's something that we are charged to take a look at. And why do I have the earphones in my ears? I was wondering why I was sounding muffled because in my ears. I'm not listening to that anymore. And so, yeah, we're going to see if we give Sister Maya a little time to join us. And so while you're here, for those who are here, let's talk a little bit about culture. Let's talk about culture in your estimation. What is it? But I don't really see, hold on. YouTube be tripping. They don't give you, you used to could play music. But I'm not making this video, what's the word I'm looking for here? And I'm going to monetize this particular video, not to my understanding. So I might play a little music while we wait for Sister Mayana to join us in the conversation. For those who join us, we're talking about culture. Feel free to type in the box your thoughts on culture. What is it in your estimation? Kind of polling the people. What is culture? What is culture made up of? And can or is culture our immune system in for society or against the things that we face? So feel free to put that in the box. Thank you for joining us once again. I spoke to Mariana like half an hour ago, and so hopefully she'll be joining us for this conversation. Actually, let me do one of Sal's moves. Let me go ahead and check and see what's going on behind the scenes. Again, feel free to share your thoughts. This is always interactive. Um, Interactive is good so that we can get understanding while or if someone wants to look up the definition of culture and bring it back so that we can read it off and get the party started, we can do that as well. Hold up. Let me see if sis is ready here. The time is at 10:04. Let's see if we can get you some music. Let's see if we can get you a little music real quick. While I see what's going on with Sister Mayana. Stand by, stand by. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. I'm gonna try to share my screen and hopefully that works. With the sharing of the screen, tonight we're talking about culture, cultural immunity. We said we were gonna touch on this topic last week. For those who missed last week, we were speaking a bit about our position on some of the things that were said, our position on or concerns about libation and other things that may be presented to the community. And so this week we're going to speak about culture, and it's not to nitpick. For those who may think that this is about nitpicking, it's not. There are a whole lot of other topics that we want to take a look at as well. And again, if you're in the listening audience and you want to join us on the conversation, to add to the conversation, bring your reading list, bring information that you've been researching, you can feel free to do so. Feel free to do so. I am trying to find out what's going on with Sister Mayana right now. So just bear with me while we get a little calming music. How about that? A little calm relaxation music. Now I want to put y'all to sleep. Hold up, hold up, hold up. I don't want to put y'all to sleep. This is stuff I use to calm my soul. You know what I'm saying? But we're not gonna get turned up. But I definitely don't wanna. Yeah, my favorite. Y'all know I like reggae. Let me see. Reggae instrument though. Groundwork vibes. All right, she's here. As soon as I put on my reggae instrumental, Sister Mayana pops in the room. We are on live, Sister Mayana. Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. I was playing them a little. I was going to go check on you now, Sister Mayana. See where you were at, but you joined us.
I was fighting the internet. That's
I know it be like that sometimes. It be like that sometimes. So
we get connected to the internet, and I'm like, and why am I not connected to the internet again? Okay, so that was that.
It'll be all right. Greetings and welcome. Greetings and welcome. We had some people pop in and pop out, so hopefully they will be back. And we just opened up to say that we're going to start talking about culture. We try to poll the audience to see if they wanted to chime in at this point, but I guess they're just listening. So we're going to go ahead and say, welcome, Sister Mina. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing well. How are you? How are you?
Yeah, I was good. I was good. So what's your thoughts? I don't want to dive all the way in, but what's your thoughts overall on culture? If somebody just walked up to you on the street, say, sis, I heard you was an anthropologist, what do you do? Dig bones? Like, what's going on with that?
That's my favorite question. Do you dig bones? That's actually my favorite question. Anthropologists do not, well, I do cultural anthropology and cross-cultural anthropology, urban anthropology. That's what I do. So, no, I don't deal with bones. Bones is for archaeologists, and if we're talking about dinosaur bones, talking about paleontology. But I'm an urban anthropologist, so I study people. I study people cross-culturally through time.
Very, very interesting. So, being that you're someone who studies people, what would be a layman's definition of culture? And what would you say? Like, sis, what's culture? I don't understand. I can talk about culture, this, that, and third. Let me hear what's culture.
I'll do you one better. Rather than give you just kind of what I would say culture is, this is like one of my favorite books. It's called From Archetype to Zeitgeist, Powerful Ideas, Powerful Thinking. And it actually has a lot of the keywords from a lot of the disciplines, anthropology, sociology, psychology, and the like, and the arts and the like. So I'll read for you the official. It's a, I don't know. Should we give them the long version or the short version?
Nah, man, sis, I'm on the street. I'm trying to catch the bus. I need the short version.
Oh, they can't listen to us because you'll read whole chapters. I don't know what they're talking about. They must not know the show. They must not know the show. All right, so I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read a little bit of it. So I'm not going to give you the Latin and any of that, but it does go on to say that the word refers to human settlements and the ways in which people have altered the environment and developed permanent binding settlements and communities. It also refers to all of those rituals, skills, crafts, technologies, arts, and other forms of expression that have been created to bind together groups of people and enable them to survive. Culture is found everywhere in the human world and can be contrasted with nature, which is very common. Very common we contrast culture and nature because one is the reason why there's always a contrast between culture and nature among anthropologists and social scientists is because nature is what exists without human intervention. But culture is something that's necessarily contrived. So there's like this idea of contrasting that which is contrived and that which exists without intervention and machinations of humankind. So that's why it's saying here that there's this contrast. It says it's often contrasted with nature in the sense of the world untouched by humans. So that's what, yeah, again, so this idea of there's no human intervention, it's untouched by humans. People transform the natural world into a cultural world where they can dominate and feel at home. So this speaks to human beings creating something so they can feel like they're in control of something. So this conversation is going to evolve where we're starting to look at what the creator has said for us to do and what we have said we're going to introduce to the nation, what we're going to introduce to society and create something else, right? So this is the idea that human beings are contributing to their reality or how they make sense of what's going on around them. And so they said that people transform the natural world into a cultural world where they can dominate and feel at home. Culture ranges from language to clothes, from ritual to technology. It encompasses all of the ways that people shape nature, relate to each other, and form their social lives. It does not refer to individual and private life so much as shared life. So this is the idea that there's a shared narrative. Everybody's on the same page. They all agree on the same thing because of some kind of shared experiences or some kind of consensus that this is something that's an agreed upon reality. It's a shared mentality. This is the last line. It is essential to understand that all human beings live within culture and also have the capacity to create culture. And the last part of that is super important because the fact that human beings can create culture means that it's not static. It means that it's always moving. It's a dynamic concept. It changes. Culture changes as people change. So it's not a reliable thing. It's not stable at all. Whatever is understood as culture today would not be what culture was a generation ago. Like we can look and see how our generation, the generation before us can't make sense of what we're doing. Even we look at the young people and we can't make sense of what they're doing. The culture changes, and the culture changes just that quick. Just from generation to generation, it can change. Forget about going into the times of the enlightened period or whatever they call these other phases of human development, phases of intellectual development. As we touch things, like I said, the difference between ritual and technology. Technology can change culture. Culture is literally what we make, and and I'll end on this note because this is a concept that I want you to stick a pin in. The idea here is that culture is how we make sense between people, how we make sense, how we want other people to understand us, and how we make sense of other people, and how we make sense just talking to each other. Culture makes us make sense between people. The other side of that is how we're making sense to the creator, right? There's a relationship between humans and the mortals and how we deal with one another. And then there's this other idea of how we relate to the Most High. So the question is that culture? And the fact is no, because how we relate to the Most High is prescribed. We know the Most High has already told us this is what we do, and it's static. That is static. That's literally in stone. Our covenant with him is literally in stone. It's not something that can change. It's what it's supposed to be. Culture, however, does change, which is why we're able to have this conversation today, why anthropologists are able to look at it cross-culturally and through time because it has changed. And so I hope that was what you were looking for.
Very, very interesting. For those who just joined us, we're talking about cultural immunity. Are we protected? We heard a thought about culture being, or it's not even just in one space, it's in all these spaces that presses, I'm wearing culture, I'm subscribing to culture, we need to get back to culture, and this is what's going to aid us, this is what's going to help us to progress, this is what's going to preserve us. And the nosy little crew of Sister Mariana and Amuna, we're like, aha, so is this so? I mean, let us investigate as to whether or not this is something that we need, because we are in that stage of you have to bring everything out, and go over it. You see what I'm saying? Because the learning curve where we are right now is not as big as it used to be. We have books, we have information, we have technology, we have 50 million translations, we have all of the open book information in our hands, and we're still making the very same mistakes as to those who didn't even have a copy of the text, right? And so when we're getting new information that's beautiful and it's big and it's shiny, and we're like, yeah, this is it, we've been chasing our tail in 50 different directions for generations. One person says, this is it, so we run over here. And they're like, oh, no, that wasn't it. Another person says, economic empowerment, that's going to do it. I saw Brother Zion Lex post something of this sentiment the other day. And you run over here and you do it, and then Toast Oklahoma happens, and that wasn't it. You see what I'm saying? And then the person says, no, it was it, but it was supposed to be done like this. And so at this time, you're like, you know what? I'm tired. So how about we put a little bit more time into investigating whether or not this is going to lead us back to what it is we say we're trying to get to. And that's another question we have to ask ourselves. What is it that we're trying to get back to? Because if the end game is not the same, then the method of reaching that destination may not be the same. Can you understand what I'm saying, Sister Man? Or did I lose you?
No, you're absolutely correct. I was totally paying. I was just letting sound know, as the audience may know, or maybe finding out, I'm broadcasting from Debate Talk for You, and not from Austin Correct. So I kind of put the keys, and we're driving from over on Debate Talk for You side. So for those of you who are joining us, this is a special edition of Under the Sun. We are cross promoting with our producer, our other home away from home, Debate Talk for You. You're listening to Peer Review for You, episode 2. And just wanted to let you know that no, this is Sal totally knows that I have hijacked.
She has hijacked it. Sal, if you're out there.
I was sending him a text message so he doesn't act like he don't remember that I took the keys to the crib. So yeah, I'm over it.
Sal, she up in there watching TV and everything. But for those who just joined us, why is this important? We will find out in a minute. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that this is not So yeah, we're talking about culture.
What does it do for us?
Wait a minute.
Yeah. It brings us from chaos into order.
What now? This thought of cultural immunity. I thought that was an interesting phrase. And as I was talking to Sister Mana, we both were looking up this thought. It was forwarded by one of the brothers in the community. And I'm like, it's interesting. And so you begin to analyze it as thinkers. Are you a thinker, Sister Mariana?
Huh?
Are you a thinker?
I don't know. I've been accused of being a thinker.
But because I come from a family who was like, think. So when someone says something, automatically it goes through all of these filters, like, you know what I mean? And I enjoy the conversation most when amongst thinkers. You know what I mean? Because thinkers come and they contribute. It's like potluck for the mental, you know what I mean? And you're like, wow, I never thought about it like that. That's interesting. Right. And you begin to Rubik's Cube the conversation, and you turn it around to make sure that the thought, because sometimes we are spiritual people. So when somebody says something and it hits you, you're like, wow, that's deep, right? And some of us just stay there. We just say, oh, that's deep, but we don't know what makes it deep. How is it deep? Is it deep in a good way? Is it deep in, you know what I'm saying, in the not good way? And so this specific, I'm like, spiritual immunity, culture, how does that translate? So when you first heard it, how did it translate for you?
When I first heard it, it was an unusual, it wasn't an unusual phrase for me because I've heard it before, but it was unusual to hear it in these other spaces and in this context, because this idea of immunity and culture being something that is married to each other. I've only heard it in certain spaces. I've only heard anthropologists speak of it, or business organizers speak of like work culture having, and this kind of immunity factor in work culture. And this particular anthropologist that I'm familiar with, and I don't remember. It was very odd for this kind of conversation to come up. Because it's it's not everybody's niche, you know what I'm saying? So and this application of immunity in this particular conversation, this is what I neglected to say when you asked earlier about culture. Culture has context. Culture always has context, which is why it can't be easily transmitted across, like anthropologists are very careful when they now, because before we were highly irresponsible when it came to understanding culture, discussing culture, and preserving culture. We just kind of othered everybody, and once you were othered, we diminished humanity, all kinds of horrible things. So now, as a consequence of that, anthropologists tend to be very, very responsible when we're dealing with other nations or other cultures or the past, right? And so, and we keep it in its context. We understand that its value, it only keeps its value in its context. Once you take something out of its context, then it will lose its value. It's like I remember. I think there's a proverb or wisdom saying that says that if you really love a flower, leave it where it is. Right? You don't pluck it, because once you pluck it because you like it, you kill it. So if you really love it, leave it where it is. And so anthropologists kind of have that approach to other cultures as we study them. And so that's why I wanted to go back and say that these things need context. So going back to your question, circling back to this idea of cultural immunity as it was being discussed, from my memory and from there's a particular book, I think we shared it. I shared it with you. It's not an Israelite concept. It's not, and it doesn't translate wholly. You can't pick it up and really kind of put it here. And I know we're going to go into that as we talk about it. But when I heard this idea of cultural immunity, it sounded like it was about to go into a very irresponsible space.
Interesting. So I'm gonna try something wild and crazy right now, y'all. I'm gonna try to share. As I said, I started looking for this in its context, or to see, where else was this thought shared. And I came across, her name is Dr. Annie, and I'm going to try to share the video because it's short, and then we can continue the conversation. As Sister Mayana said, her name is Marimba Annie, right? Dr. Marimba Annie, or Donna Richards is her government. She wrote a book. She's a real doctor. She's an anthropologist, and she specializes. Well, you wanted to say something, Sister Mayana?
No. I was when you said that she was a doctor, and I was thinking she was an anthropologist. You said that as well.
Yeah, she's an anthropologist, and she specializes in Africana studies. So I want to play it so that we can continue the discussion of where this thought, one of the places, because it can be other places. Because what happens is people get information and they build on that thought, and they build on that thought, and so somebody may have had the seed and another person, you understand, but then we have to kind of trace where they are, not only with this particular thought, but as Sister Mayana said, the context of what they're coming from, their systems of belief. All of these things are important when they're forwarding a certain thought, because as the sister said, if you move it to another place that has a different set of guidelines and a different set of rules, it may not necessarily work the same. It's like taking the engine out of a BMW and trying to put it in a Ford. It's an engine, it may not work the same. So I'm going to do some wild and try to share my screen here. Let me know, Sister Mayana, if you can see. Can you see it?
I don't see it on their side yet.
No?
No, let me see. Let's see it on my side. No, I don't see it. I still see your lovely face.
Huh?
I still see your lovely face.
There. Oh, wait, no. I forgot to share. Now let's see if you can see it. Oh, no. Oh, no. The L matrix. Can you see? What's on mute, Sister Mayana?
What? I'm on mute.
Sorry about that. Just type to me in the box. I'm going to go online to see if I can see it. Sorry about that ill crazy feedback right there. And then, okay, yes.
European understands that. It binds us to each other. It gives us identity. It gives us a reason for surviving. And then it tells us who we should live for and who we should die for if we have to. Culture is an energy source for thriving. And it gives us a sense of security. It also puts us into a system of accountability. We are accountable to our ancestors. Now, when you're looking at all of that, and it's a template for living, then think about it. And it is a petri dish. So that African culture becomes a petri dish, and it produces Africans. It cultivates Africans, and no other culture can make that statement. Here, no other culture can produce and cultivate that. Only African culture can do that. If we look at culture like that and see it as a means by which a people protect themselves, then we could understand culture as the immune system of a people. Think of people as the one and culture is that immune system, right? Okay. Now, what does the immune system do? The immune system, we have the T cells, we got the lymphocytes, we become laborious, right? The job is to recognize the antigen, or antigen is a foreign body which threatens the health of the whole. That's when you get that seed destroyed, all right? That's right. But their job is to neutralize, eliminate in any way, that disease, that poison, those antigens, things that work against it. Okay?
I wanted to share that, and I'll put the link in the box so that you can hear, and hopefully you were able to hear. I wanted to put that link in the box so that you can hear this elder, she's an elder, forwarding a thought of culture being a protective mechanism. And by extension, if you compare it to the immune system of the body, which is what she went on to do, then culture will become your immunity. So this thought of culture being your immunity and the question, are you protected? We're looking at the universal truth in that statement, the possible shortcomings in that statement, if there even exist any shortcomings in that statement. If it is true that culture is our immunity, and then so one would conclude then if we get culture like a booster shot, then we will be immune from our present reality. But if indeed culture carries within it, because we know that immunity or booster shots, let me say more than immunity, your booster shot carries within it the disease that you're trying to prevent. And so it makes you a little sick. You see what I'm saying? They give you a little bit of the issue to build up your immune system to be able to later fight against the issue. And this is why you see a lot of people fight against booster shots, what they call immunizations, because there's a lot of unclean things also in the immunization that you introduce into your body. In the same way culture can introduce within your mind, as we see the present day culture that we're living in, it can introduce viruses into your mind, your thoughts. If you subscribe to modern day culture, if you subscribe to, you know, everything is fast, the television, the media, if you subscribe to all of these things, you're introducing certain toxins and viruses into your system. And so I wanted to share that thought was coming from Dr. Ani, and then she goes on to explain. So Sister Mayana, I sent you that as well. You were able to see it. What were your thoughts on the way in which she explained culture being immunity?
So this is very important. She did what anthropologists do. When there is an existing idea, and an anthropologist is going to use it in a different way, she forwards a definition. You'll notice that she said, if we understand immunity as, right? So she establishes a definition. She's telling you what part of this concept she's going to use. She's only using the idea that immunity has the consequence of defense, which it does. Part of what the immune system, part of the overall composition of the immune system is that it forwards a defense, or it is your defense mechanism, right, against attacks, against viruses and disease. That's correct. But there's another component to that, which one of the things that I thought of when I first heard this idea of connecting. Well, not when I first heard it, because when I first heard it, it was in her book some years ago, which was very interesting. When you brought it to me, I was like, okay, see, now I know this book. I have this book. I'll give you this book. And anyway, my point is that immunity, when it lives in its context, when it lives in its original definition, what it is that the immune system protects you in spite of you. Culture, right? Culture is something that we have. Culture is something that develops because of you, but the immune system is something that's in place in spite of you, and that's a difference that is not being explored. Like, and she's not trying to explore it. She doesn't want to explore it. It's not what she's discussing. So to visit something and just take this part, like, this is how you know that it's very clear that when people are using something they shouldn't be touching, because they won't talk to you about it in its wholeness, and they just kind of take the words that sound pretty, right? That sounds cool. The culture is the whatever is the immune system of the society or whatever. Okay, that sounds great until you really kind of look at it, interrogate it, or go back to the original person who said it, which is this sister here, this LD here, who originally said it, and listen to what she means. And what she just said was, what she's taking from this metaphor is that the immune system is a defense, which it is. But when you also consider that the immune system is something that is in place in spite of you, and culture is something that's in place because of you. That's why I gave you the definition of culture. Culture is human beings acting on nature, acting on their environment, creating things, destroying things so that they can be in control. You're not in control of your immune system does what it does in spite of you. If you go out and you eat or you expose yourself to something that can be harmful to you, your immune system kicks in and forms a barrier. There's nothing you're doing. Your immune system exists in spite of you. In spite of all the terrible things you expose yourself to, in spite of all of the bright ideas you think you have, your immune system will protect you. The only thing that functions like that in Israel is Torah. No matter what we go into, no matter what we explore, no matter what we think is shiny and new, the thing that stops us from destruction is Torah. Torah for Israelites, Torah for us is the immune system. It's what keeps us separated. And there's a book that I read, and I'll put the title in the description box unless I look it up again and find it for you quickly. But it's a book that was looking at, or was it an article? That was looking at borders. And I'll talk a little bit. Do I have time to talk about that now? You want to move on, and then I'll bring it up again in a minute. But I want to kind of right now we're talking about immunity, and immunity having this result or consequence of blocking something. It reminded me of this other concept, and I wanted to talk about it. So I can stick a pin in it if you want to.
Stick a pin, because you did transition, and then we can come back there. You did transition us to, if culture in the Hebraic concept does not trump, this is what I'm hearing, does not trump Torah, Torah trumps culture, right. Then if we're going to look for safeguards, if we're going to look for immunity against outside physical, metaphysical, spiritual viruses, then we have to subscribe to Torah, because it's our shield, it's our protector, it's what's going to basically put the head and head around us, you know what I'm saying, encompass us so that no harm will come to us. And so sometimes within the text, we see culture or customs at odds with Torah. Have you seen that in your studies, where Torah is saying one thing, but the customs of the people, which are Hebraic, are saying another thing? And the issue that the Creator has, and he gives it through the mouth of his prophets, is that you're subscribing to your customs and not to the Torah, which is supposed to be your guide. Sister Maryland.
Right, absolutely. Yes, even in my own studies, we have come across this concept several times. We look in the book of Leviticus, we look in the Torah. The Torah is consistently warning us not to engage in the nations round about us, because we are in a space that is called culture areas. So we're in all of these shared culture areas, and the Most High is saying, listen, just because you're in the same space with these people, don't do what they're doing. They're not doing these things for me. They're not doing these things to me. Whatever they're doing, it's no good for you. It's not going to work for you. So don't do these things. It's literally saying these things. I think Leviticus, is Leviticus 18, correct my memory. Is it Leviticus 18 that literally begins with, because of the nations round about you, I now have to give you this list. I now have to delineate this list of things that you can't do, because you're now among all of these people. I think it's Leviticus 18 begins. I mean, Leviticus 18 that begins with that as the preface. That is specifically because you are in these other places. In fact, whenever the Most High is going to give us, very often when the Most High is going to give us a reason why He's codifying something, or suddenly the prophets have to codify, or the priests have to codify something to us, it's usually there's a reference to, because you are looking at your neighbors, or you are too close to the neighbors, or there's some fear that we're going to adopt what the neighbors' kids are doing, like literally what the neighbor kids are doing. And He's saying, look, don't play with the neighbors' kids. Don't bring that here. That's not what we do in this house. And you hear your mother say that, your father say that, right? You go, well, I don't care what your friends do. We don't do that here. We don't do that. That's because he ain't none of my baby. That's not my child. I'm my father's daughter. So my father's thing was, that's not my daughter. I don't care what so and so does. That's not, she ain't none of my child. And the Most High pretty much throughout Torah says, okay, listen, that's not okay for my children. And that's what we're looking at here. The idea that other people have features of culture that aren't beneficial to the task that Most High assigned Israel with. And I think we're going to talk later about the difference between culture and custom, right?
Right, or the fact that they're one is an umbrella and the other one goes underneath it, and they're not necessarily always synonymous. Also,
right.
Looking at the fact that just because it's in the text and just because there's record of our foreparents doing it does not mean that it's something that we should subscribe to. Does not mean that it's something that we shouldn't take back out and take a look at, because the text reveals to us that even while we were in Egypt, our foreparents, when we came out of Egypt, even when we came out of Egypt, and we came into the land, in the wilderness, into the land, there were a number of things that came with us that never left. One of the illustrations of this is when Yaakov is leaving his parents, running away from his brother, goes to Padam Aram. On his way back, he knows that there are idols in his house. On his way back, when he gets the vision, he's like, yo, cleanse yourself and get rid of them idols. So all throughout Hebrew Israelite history, there has always been the presence of what you're not supposed to be doing. This is what makes the story so real even unto this day. So for us to act as though everything that we're reading is okay because it's there, when the reality is, over the time, it has been shown that there's a number of things that we kept going off course. And so that's what I wanted to remind us as we're looking at, see, it's here. Yeah, it's there, but what we told to do it, is it custom? Did it become culture? And how did it affect us? Because I wanted to say this, and then I'll give it back to you, Sister Mina. If we look around the world at culture, right, and we look at the customs that the people have adopted, like you say, the people is bending their reality. For instance, if you live in a place where there's a lot of coconuts, the chances are you're going to have a lot of coconut flavor in your food. Because culturally now your food is going to develop a taste based on what's in that area. And then that says that becomes known in this area for this type of food, because that was what was in your natural environment, right? And so it says it's cultural. You see what I'm saying? what plant is native to this place, then that plant becomes cultural for you to eat. This, whatever the case may be. So this is how things work their way in and work their way out of culture. When we see things that are done around the world, just because they're culture doesn't make it right. Because you can have viruses within culture. You can have wickedness. You can have wickedness as a part of the culture of the people. And so that doesn't, what does it immune them to if the wickedness is actually in the culture? You see what I'm saying? So for instance, in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, when the cry goes up, what does the Malak come to do? They began to have a culture of wickedness surrounding this place. And the Malak comes to say, yo, I came to check out to see, you know, if this is really the case. In the book of, what is that? Is it Jashar, or is it, I think it's the book of Jashar. It goes a little bit more into what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah and how they really interface with the people and what they became known for. One more instance in the Torah is the case of culturally what was known of Egypt. Why does Abraham turn to Ima Sarai and like, yo, tell them your sister, you my sister? Why does he say that? Because he's like, the culture of the people is they're going to take what's mine because they feel they have the right to. And so these are some of the behaviors that can be embedded in culture that doesn't make it right just because it's tradition, just because it is what people are doing. Sister Mayana?
No, absolutely. And what you're talking about also, it gives me the opportunity to kind of segue into what custom is. Customs are, you're right, that sometimes it can fall under the umbrella of culture, because what customs are, I'll give you an example that's relatable. We talk about adaptation and being culturally, being adaptive or maladaptive. It has to do with becoming familiar with something. You might be familiar with the phrase, I'm accustomed to doing things this way, or I'm accustomed to the heat, or I'm accustomed to the cold, or I'm accustomed to eating after 3 p.m. It's what you become familiar and what you become used to. That's your custom. When something is transferred to another generation, and it's not just you, but it becomes generational, or it spreads, not only the downline, but maybe outward as well, then it becomes tradition, because you're familiar with it and used to it, and then your child becomes familiar with it and used to it and continues the same traits. Those things become tradition. So it goes from being what you're accustomed to, or what the custom is, to what the tradition is. Now it's a tradition in your household to eat after 3 p.m. It becomes tradition. But that's not culture, right? That's just custom, from custom, tradition. Culture is a whole body of things, and these things like customs and rituals and art and language, those are features within culture. And so that's why Amuna would be correct to say that it can be as an under the umbrella, if the umbrella is culture, instead. But custom itself, to understand what a custom is by itself, a custom is just something that you're used to doing. It's really just exactly that simple. I'm accustomed to eating after 3 p.m. or I'm accustomed to the heat. Because I'm not accustomed to the heat, I don't want to live in Texas, right? I'm not accustomed to that kind of heat. That's not so that's how the word custom gets used. That's how the word custom is used. And when something, like I said, when something becomes consistent and there's like a downline to it, it becomes tradition. And traditions aren't culture either, but it can be considered a feature of culture.
A feature, correct, a feature of it. And that's how, when we look in the Torah, the word actually that we see is customs. When you look at, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna look for culture, and I'm like, okay, I don't see it, but I do remember, don't follow the ways of the nations. And so when you see custom come up over 100 times, you see it as it relates to statutes, you see it as it relates to, it's translated as custom, you see it as a feature of this overall culture. So what Israel was doing was adopting customs into the culture of Israel. So we wouldn't necessarily take everything from the roundabout peoples. We would take the part that was attractive and then try to put it in our culture and make it a part of who we were. And the creator's like, oh, well, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? And so, and it usually was around the space of sexuality. We adopted their customs. It usually was in the space of sexuality and sustenance, which is your food You know what I'm saying? Your clothing. We wanted to. This is why you see a lot of the people were worshiping Baal of different spaces, is because they wanted to ensure that their grain. The Most High said He provides the grain in His due season, and they were like, I'm not sure if I could trust that. You see what I'm saying? So in the space of fertility, this is the common concerns that people of antiquity had. Like, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna drink, and then I'm gonna reproduce. And so this is the space where you see a lot of, within the text, what our foreparents were doing. And then by extension, who's going to protect me? And so we would bring in the customs of other people for protection against the dangers that we exposed ourselves to do, because we was listening to them in the first place, which is just wow. You know, now that I've jacked up and that Most High is no longer with the person, now you want some protection from, you know, the powers of the other people. And so I just wanted to add that in the conversation, that this is our area that catches us up most of the time. Have you seen that, or am I just bugging out?
No, I actually want to give something to support what you're saying now. For example, when Yaakov was deceived by his father-in-law, the reason, the justification that Laban gave was our custom. It's our custom. The reason I gave you Leah is because it's our custom. So this idea that so I just wanted to show that you're right. We don't necessarily see a lot of the discussion of culture happening, because again, and let's consider that. I want us to not skate past the fact that when we do a word search or a word study, we're not going to find culture there, but we do find custom, and that's just something that we're used to doing. Right? It's not what we do. So Laban said, yeah, we don't do that. I know you want Rachel, but we don't do that. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to it. Nobody around here does that. That's not our custom. Right? That has nothing to do with the Most High. Those culture is this idea of how you relate to one another. Customs are things that you're familiar with, but what the Most High has for us are regulations. It's how we relate to the Most High. He didn't bring the Most High into this conversation because it wasn't about the Most High. There was nothing about dealing with a deity at all in that conversation. It just had to do with what they were used to doing. And that's how we see custom. Rachel, when Rachel doesn't want to come off the camel, doesn't want to reveal what she has, she says she's in the custom of women. She's after the custom of women. And so what that does is it's sick. So again, if there's a custom, it's something that people are used to. So just saying that signals to her father a whole series of things that he's used to. He knows what it means when she says, I'm after the custom of women, or this is something that women go through. This is something that's familiar to women. And that signals enough conversation for him to be like, oh, okay, I know what that means. Right? I know what that means. She's not dealing with anything else. I think it would be interesting. She doesn't appeal to purity laws or anything. She appeals to custom, right? She doesn't appeal to the law. Is my memory incorrect on that? Does she appeal to the law, or she only appeals to custom? I remember her appealing to custom.
I'll pull it right now. It's Genesis, better sheet, Genesis 31, and start at 34 and then 35. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. And so the word custom there is direct, or the way of women is upon me. And so in this instance, yes, she appeals to something that he would have understood. Right. You know, but you didn't have to use too many terms for him to understand what now that means to him. And apparently he understood because he didn't go any further.
Right.
Right.
It's very interesting. It means it's something that you're used to. It's very interesting. There was no appeal to a law or to a deity or to anything there. It's just an appeal to the custom of women. Right? This is something. So he's got daughters. He knows what that means.
Right. He already knows what that means. And so that's kind of what it doesn't necessarily, we're not saying that one is not related to the other, or they're not connected, or that Torah cannot produce customs, right? Like a Sister Mariana says, Torah is Torah. When we subscribe to Torah, then if we subscribe to Torah and do it, then that becomes our custom.
Right.
So when we're looking for our custom, and by extension our culture, it's centered not on us affecting our environment the way in which we choose to is centered on how the Creator has already deemed us to interface with our environment. So it will never be our custom to say, yeah, slice up the bacon and eat it, because
Right.
Torah already told you that that is unclean. So now it's your custom not to eat unclean flesh. But here's one thing that humanity and we also see in some spaces that Hebrews began to do, which is add to Torah, which is a prohibition on adding to Torah, and it made new customs and heavier weights. So when the New Testament comes around, you hear about all of these extracurricular things that were added on top of the law that now we say are custom. And you hear these discussions in the New Testament about eating with unwashed hands and all of these things, because now man was like, I hear what Torah says, but I want to add a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I want to make it mine. You know what I'm saying? And so we start putting in different things.
I double the thing.
Yeah, a little bit of adobo, you know what I'm saying? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's like, oh, it's not sweet enough for me, with the sugar. And that's kind of what was happening. And then we hear this argument, especially in the New Testament, is very clear. The illustration of this argument that I'm not telling you not to do. And this is what a lot of our brothers and sisters say, is that it's not telling you not to do Torah. It's telling you not to do the customs that were added to Torah. Right. And so this is where we see, Sister Mina was saying earlier, that customs evolve or culture evolves. And so the culture becomes, well, you're not, you putting on ZCs, but you're not wearing real ZCs until you, and this is, we kind of have that same back and forth today, that what is now you're doing culture, but it's not cultural enough for me. You know what I'm saying? And so we have individuals trying to put their signature, so to say, on the discussion or on the conversation, or what it looks like to be a Hebrew, move like a Hebrew, or subscribe to Torah. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to do so. Sister Mina, you said you wanted to go back to a thought that you had. Feel free to do so.
We were talking about this idea of immunity as a feature of culture, or that whatever the culture is, the immunity. That the sister forwarded, that is floating around the nation now, it's been introduced to the nation now, unfortunately without context or proper citation. But what she's talking about, this idea of immunity, is a defense, as she's saying it as a defense, and that brings up some images for me. One of the things that I know, those of us who have studied it know that during the Iron Age 2, even before that, I guess it's just a little buzzword for everybody, is pre-exilic. The nation, even if we were just villages or cities or what have you, were very invested in having walls. We see that, especially during the Davidic dynasties, and when we become a dynasty, we are invested in walls. You see a lot of the walling around the cities, walling even around smaller villages and smaller cities. So what this tells anthropologists and archaeologists is that Iron Age and Bronze Age and ancient Israel in general, pre-exilic or what have you, were very invested in borders. We see in the scriptures that we're so invested in our borders that we have whole prohibitions against moving our markers. Why is that important? Because also immunity, the idea of the immune system puts up a wall. It necessarily protects. That's what the wall does. It's a defense. It's a defense. And so what anthropologists and those that are invested in trying to make meaning from why there were walls to begin with is that there's the understanding that Iron Age, pre-exilic, or ancient Israel understood their worldview included othering anything outside of Israel. They were not invested in blurring anybody's line. They didn't want to be the bridge to nothing else. They liked their borders. They liked them a lot. They liked them high, big walls, lots of walls everywhere, even around the smallest little village. There was this idea of being holy and set apart. They weren't looking to be common, and they didn't want anything in common with these other nations. These big walls, that's what walls do for cultures and societies. That's how anthropologists interpret it and understand when we look at all of these historical spaces that had walls. Look at, matter of fact, I don't even have to go historical. I don't have to go to the wall of China. Present day, who's trying to build a wall? Right now, we have a maniac trying to build a wall. Borders are important. We have to fortify the borders. We have to keep the others out. This America is America, and everybody outside has to stay out. The concept is the same. And it's actually kind of cool that we have this kind of current. I can explain it to you better because it's happening right now on your timeline, right now on the television, right now in your living room conversations. You know that America's talking about this wall because it's a what? According to our president, it's a defense. It's a way to protect us from all of the rapists and the terrorists right out there, because it's not happening in here. But the idea is it's out there, and so this wall is supposed to do that. So when we see we see pre-exilic Israel, when we see Iron Age Israel, when we see ancient Israel, always putting up borders, always putting up walls. It's this idea of we're not trying to build any bridges. We're not trying to blend in with anybody else. That we like our borders. We like being different. That the world view of Israel was to other the nations. Even it's like this idea of being separate from what the human and non-human. In this case, they're talking about like the animals and even other things that exist on the other side of the wall. And then there's also this idea of Israel and not Israel. And this distinction was important to us. It lets us know that distinction was important to us. It was important to us to be Israel and to be separate from that which was not Israel. That's what the walls did. So when we talk about this idea of immunity, and we want to have this conversation about immunity in terms of it being a defense, and we want to look at what our immune system does. If we're going to keep it Hebraic, I'm not trying to be all over the place. If we're talking about Hebraic, and that's Hebraic no matter where you are. We're still talking about Hebrews, and we understand that the people on the continent are also Hebrews, and the people in all of these other spaces are also Hebrews. Then when I say Hebrew, I'm talking about Hebrews. It doesn't matter which part of the soil we're sitting on. That's supposed to be the thing that keeps us together. Remember earlier in the definition that I gave you about culture, it's those things that bind us. It's those things that bind us. Very often, culture is tied to land, of course, because you have to be in some type of historically, you had to be in close proximity in order to have some kind of something that bonded, some kind of bonding agent between you is usually proximity. But now, as I said, ritual gives way to technology, and there are other ways to connect. And so we're not necessarily tied to land in order to create culture, right? So I feel that I can say that even though we are dispersed, we're still capable of having culture because we have these other ways of connecting and reconnecting. But when we're talking about mixing or cultures and trying to tie things in based on similarities that have to do with custom and ritual and forgetting these terms are important. So basically what I'm trying to say is these terms are important. Knowing what custom is important. Knowing that culture is necessarily by definition a machination of man. It's something that we do and something we create. It's something that happens because we interfere and we intervene and we want to have dominance. I think it was said, because we're trying to do it for some higher power, this idea. So this what we want to do for a higher power means that we don't want to have dominance. We are yielding to a higher power. But culture is saying we are that higher power. We have the ability to create, and so we create. We are the ones in that position. We put ourselves in this position of creating something. So as a nation, especially as a returning nation that is trying to get back in alignment with what the Creator has said, I don't think that we really want to rest on our hubris and those things that we want to create or have created in the past. Instead, what we need to do is rely on those things that are stable. Torah is stable. Torah gets to act as our immune system because it does what it keeps us in line in spite of ourselves. Culture is what we do because of ourselves. And so the way this ties back into this idea of the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and pre-exilic or ancient Israel and their walls is that this was a way of protecting. This was their defense. This lets us know that when they were thinking about their worldview of defense, right, and protecting themselves, they built a wall. They built a wall that made them inside able to be separate from what's going on out there. So that it's easier to be in alignment with the Most High without having all of the distractions, right? Because you have the nations doing all these other things rounding about you, and so there's no distractions. These distractions are literally walled out, and that defense goes up, and they are protected. They understood themselves as separate. They understood, and it was important to them. That separateness was important. That set apartness was important. It was important enough to build walls. You see it all throughout Torah. And I'll find the name of that article, because I think it was an article, and share that with you if you're interested. I probably will even be able to literally share it with you. I probably have it in the PDF somewhere. I was telling the moon, I know I had this book, so I'm positive I still have this article somewhere because I store everything.
I don't know if it's on my side that I'm hearing like, is it my side or do you have a USB that's going doo-doo-doo?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, what is that sound? It's making me go. And I'm like, is it mine? I don't got no USB.
I'm trying not to lose my phone during the time that we're on the phone. But
right.
No.
Okay. Now I was just checking. I thought it was me. Yeah, thank you for that. But as you were speaking, I wanted to bring it into today's space and time, because somebody might be watching like, what in the world are they talking about, and why is it even important? It's important because before I go there, as Sister Maya was talking about walls, I'm always looking at both sides of the thing. Walls, and she's correct in the information that she's bringing forward. On the other side of protection, walls also, it keeps things out and keep things in. And so if the stuff that you have in should be out, then the wall now becomes a prison. You know what I'm saying? The wall now traps you in a culture that is detrimental to your health, to your growth, to your progression, to your spiritual elevation, right? So when we talk about, if we're looking back to the thought of culture being an immunity, there's an autoimmune deficiency disorder, right? Where your immunity begins to attack you, right? Is there such a thing? Autoimmune deficiency, when the immune system turns on you now, and it begins to attack the individual. So these things they can be functional, and then if we get into the space where it is dysfunctional,
right,
we have to be honest about that dysfunctionality. We cannot say, listen, this is this, and not take into consideration that if you flip it around, you see what I'm saying? It can give you the effect that you're not necessarily going for, right? And so, like you said, we like to throw out things in general and be like, yeah, I like the way that sounds. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. You know what I mean? And then you're like, wait a minute. If that means that, then this also means that. And how do you feel about this? So as it relates to culture, there's a lot of abuses. There are a lot of exploitation. There's a lot of danger, misinformation that's being pushed on the community in the name of culture. And so why is culture being, some would say, well, you targeting culture, sis. Culture is positive. What's good with you? You're like, do y'all hate everything and all things? Sister Mayana, you just a hater? You just wake up in the morning just hating stuff? Like, yeah, I don't like what that person said. I hate on that.
I hate on bad.
I think you just hate because it's morning time. No, because on the other side of this, when you're given reasons as to why things are being done, if you're giving explanations, you hear things such as it's culture, right? And then you say, well, is it culture or is it Torah? Well, see, sis, you hate it. You know what I'm saying? That's the feminist spirit that's within you. I sent some feminism in you because I'm telling you it's culture, and now you asking me if it's Torah. So then we have to say, is culture Torah and Torah culture? Or can Torah be Torah and sometimes culture just be what humans created in that time and space? We have to be honest about this. I'm going to throw out the P word right now, because the P word, not what y'all thinking, the other P word, is what a lot of people forward to not only this community, but communities as why you should subscribe, because the P word is culture. Y'all know what the P word is? You might need to go to lip balm.
I know.
You don't know what the P word? Does anybody out here know what the P word is? Not that P word, another P word. Anybody? Besides Sister Maya, you know the person in class was raising their hand. Besides Sister Maya, okay? Does anybody know the P word that is tucked right up on the culture, and the reason why so many families, because of
just
it being a,
they saying no, they giving up. Just
no one knows what the P word is. Come on,
just pick a P word. Everybody type one word. No, I want them to try. Everybody type. Come on, let's do some communities conversation. Yeah. Just guess. Think of the many doctrines that we come into contact with in the community. What are the many doctrines? One of them starts with a P. Mm-hmm. Think of all of the popular doctrines that we confront in Israel. Or just write any word that starts with a P. I know that you're there. I can see you. It says you're watching. Perception. Okay, perception is a P word.
Is it a doctrine? I mean, a trigger doctrine, a trigger finger. We've talked about it. It's forward as culture. Right. It involves many GYNs.
Yes.
There are many GYNs involved.
Good. Polygamy. Quetsy's in the house.
Quetsy. You was nicely watching Quetsy. So Quetsy is in the house. Shout out to Quetsy. Yes, polygyny is something that that is tucked under culture. And then you say, aha, Jacob did it. Aha, Abraham did it. Oh, Isaac didn't do it because he was on some next stuff. Esau did it. You know what I'm saying? And then we say, this is the culture. And then someone else says, well, is it Torah? And then we say, Torah regulated it. And then you see this conversation of that it became a custom that Torah regulated, but it was a custom of the people. And Torah later comes on. And as Sister Mina would say, I would let her say, what did Torah regulate? Did Torah regulate polygyny or... And the mic is yours.
Well, it depends on what the proof text is, but very often.
Listen, when you go to the book of Exodus, sister, stop playing, sister. When you go to
which
man has two wives. Okay, sister, it actually says women, but you know, for the sake of the translators, and one loved and one hated, right? What happens to what does Torah regulate in that particular text? As I give you the actual verse.
Well, it regulates a very uncomfortable word. It's a C word. You know, the C word that people don't like. People find it offensive. I'm going to use this very offensive C word. Can you guess that C word? Let's say. And today's lesson is brought to you by the letters P and.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. It was Deuteronomy 21:15.
Okay. Well, that's good. Let's go to the first one. I'll do Exodus, then I'll do Deuteronomy. Right. The one in Exodus is the one that you correctly in a conversation you had with one of the brothers about polygamy. I think we should put that in the description box. The conversation you had about polygamy and the Exodus verse that is mistranslated as wife and is mistranslated to include a lot of marriage language that is not in the Hebrew. That if you were to read it in the Hebrew, all of that marriage language that is invented by like literally invented, just like it took their Sharpie and just wrote it in there. It's not there at all. It's not even mistranslated. It's just not there. That's not there. This language is literally not there. That's in Exodus. And the context of that C word, that dreaded, offensive C word context, the context of Exodus.
I thought you was going to say the C word was concubine. Now,
No, they like that word. They don't like the word context. The context in Exodus is servant. And so what's being regulated there are the rights and the protections of the female servant, of the daughter that goes into a man's household under the pretext of, or the pretense of oh, no, pretext of the pretext of being a servant. And then other things change. The master's household changes for whatever reason. And that should not have any negative impact on whatever the agreement was to care for and whatever arrangements were made by the young woman's family and this master's family. And so that context is not polygamy. It's the rights and protections of the female servant. Deuteronomy, the context there, actually, interestingly enough, there's a lot of surrounding discussion about women who are acquired under the conditions of a military conquest. And it's all conversation about booty and spoil, and that women are necessary. Anything of value. If you go into a city and you conquered it, anything of value was considered spoil. Young women who have not known a man, or young women of marriageable age, of childbearing age, of course would have been valuable. And so she was considered spoiled. And such a woman could be brought into a man's household, interestingly enough, with no discussion about what his marital status is. So the argument very often is it could potentially allow for this idea of polygyny, of the man having more than one woman in his household due to this circumstance. But in a particular verse, it's even though it's found in that context, it doesn't discuss it. So, but anyway, the verse that is often used as a proof text doesn't say anything about how to manage the wives. The argument is always, you see, it tells you what to do with the wives. It actually tells you nothing about the wives. It says, dude, you did this thing, but you won't do it. But you're not going to let it affect the children. That entire verse has to do with inheritance, and it has to do with the children. It doesn't say anything about allowing, giving permission. It doesn't say it actually gives absolutely no thought. It doesn't address or approach the fact that he did this thing, other than to say, I don't care what you think. Like, literally, the only thing you can take from that verse is the Most High doesn't care what that man thinks. It says, you like her, I don't care. You will give it, when it comes to the children, I don't care what your preferences are. I literally don't care what you think. Who your favorite is doesn't matter to me. This is what's going to go down when it comes to these children. So the only thing you see in that verse is how much the Most High literally does not care about what the man's opinion is on anything. So he's the one who went out, made this decision. There's multiple women in his household, and the Most High's like, all right, whatever. But when it comes to the children, this is how it's going to go down. So that verse in Deuteronomy cannot be used as a proof text for polygyny, because it literally says nothing at all about how to manage two women. The only thing that verse says is he doesn't like one of them. And I don't see how that could ever be used as a positive example of polygyny when it tells you that it's a circumstance where the man doesn't like one of them. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It says he hates one of them. So again, that's not a proof text for polygyny.
You'll get argued down about, I remember we had some community conversations, and that one was like, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, I didn't say it. The text says it. You know what I mean? That the text actually uses it's not hate. It's not like hate. It's like kind of hate, but didn't really like hate. And I was like, wow, that was the most with the acrobatics and the Pilates. But why are we bringing this up? Not to bang on polygyny. That's not what.
Not today.
Not today. We don't bang on. We inform with historical information, Sister Mayana. That's what we do. But this is one of them that is brought up because it's used as Torah when we investigate the text, as Sister Mayana says, after we have done. It's not Torah, it's actually custom.
Right.
And so this custom that has now been placed in the culture, which by the way are in cultures throughout the world,
Right.
and it's not specific. And I've said it before, and people get upset. It's not holy, meaning it's common.
It's common.
So if multiple cultures throughout the world, if I go to Asia, if I go to the Mormons, if I go to India, if I go to all these places, and I see this type of polyamorous relationship, multiple loves, in specific, because Israel is like not anything else, that we don't do all that other stuff. Only polygyny,
right,
is represented in other spaces, then it's common.
Right.
Not holy. Holy means it's separated. This is a practice that other people don't do. So if you're subscribing to practices that everyone does, then we have to be honest about what it is, right? And we have to be honest that it's a custom, which is within our culture, which we adopted into our culture. Like for instance, when you brought up Laban saying to Yaakov that this is not how we do things here, that custom was then later on prohibited.
Correct.
Within our custom.
Correct. Within our law. That's not custom. That's
right. Not in the law. It was prohibited in the law because that was the Sororite marriage is the counterpart to the Levirate marriage.
Correct.
Right? So the Sororite marriage is the marrying of two sisters so that you can kind of, farm in the same land. You understand what I'm saying? Right. And so when he was saying that, he wasn't pulling the wool over his eyes. That's a real thing.
Yes.
And because it caused so much contention, it caused so much issues that later down the line, the Most High said to his servant Moshe, this has to be regulated. This cannot happen. And it gives you the reason as to why it cannot happen, so that she will not vex her in her lifetime. So that's one custom that was adopted from another nation, and it was X'd out.
Right. And it's still in the, so if you're confused, it's still in those nations. You can still, you can still see these things in play in these other cultures, in these other nations, in these customs still live in its context. But as Amuna said, that custom comes to Israel, and then our culture, the law, because law becomes part of culture, the law says, no, you can't do this. You can't do, and that's another thing that's very interesting when there's a positive conversation or a conversation that wants to advocate for polygyny. And I know we promised that we weren't going to bang on it, so we're not. But we often hear that, wow, did I just lose my train of thought? Do you remember the sentence I had before I made a disclaimer
about banging on polygyny?
Yeah, before I gave that disclaimer, I made a whole sentence and it was going somewhere.
The customs were some of these customs were actually the customs became law. The law became custom. The other way around. The laws became customary, and then I don't know where you were going with this.
I would say that the law is a part of culture. Where I was going with that is that it's very interesting to see that this custom that Laban said, this is our custom, is often forwarded as the best reason for polygyny. Right. Look, Yaakov did it. This is if not for this, there wouldn't be Israel. We wouldn't have a nation. It's very interesting that statement is made because, as you just pointed out, this custom, this man-made thing that became so familiar and so usual, the Most High comes and makes it completely unlawful. So to say that polygamy or Jacob's use of these two women and then their servants is how we became a nation, and that's why it's okay, is actually counterintuitive because it's countercultural. The law comes in and says that exact model you can't do.
Okay. Yeah, it's not okay.
It's completely off the table. So it's actually the worst argument for polygyny in our culture because it's literally unlawful.
And just to show you that as we progress, just to share, as you said that, there's some spaces that once you come out of, you can't go back. I'll just leave it at that. There's some ways in which you enter into your reality that there's a no return zone. You see what I'm saying? The law prohibits you from going back that way again. You know what I mean? And so what we tend to do, like you said, when we're looking for reasons, we're trying to go back to spaces that you're not allowed anymore. So yes, you came out of there, but you can't go back.
Can't go back.
You can't go back. And if you go back, it's an abomination. You know what I'm saying? If you go back, it's you're prohibited from going that way.
Like Egypt, but we're not supposed to go back to Egypt.
Not supposed to go back to Egypt. And also, once you exit the matrix of your mother, you can't go back there.
That's right.
There's prohibitions in the law about any such dealing.
You can't go back and see your mother.
Yeah, well, why not? You know what I'm saying? Because I came from there. It's like there's no return. You see? And so there's some things that are only just one-way streets. Sister Malaka said that polygyny is related to the desire for the other P word. That's everything right now, Sister Malaka.
Who's down with OPP? Yeah.
So we're not gonna stay like forever long.
No.
Just wanted to bring our peer review for you thoughts on and I found the Dr. Ani very interesting. She's very knowledgeable in a lot of spaces. I don't again agree with everything that she's saying, but she has some information as it relates to. She said something that really, as I was researching, she said something that really stuck with me, and I was sharing it earlier with Sister Mariana, that the trauma, which is what I speak about often, that the trauma has the virus in it.
Right.
And so because we have internalized the trauma, which the Ma'afa, which she called the Holocaust, which is the whole thing that encompasses the transatlantic slave trade and all of our damage and issues and trauma that we experience, in it is the virus. And then within us is that genetic makeup, that memory, that DNA that we refuse to, as a community, as a culture. We live in a culture of denial, right? Not an ability to accept. Turn that off, please. Why has the baby? I'm sorry. I'm like a little bit distracted here. And so when she said that, it's something I usually say the cure is in the cause and the cause is in the cure, right? That's what that's the way I've been terming it, that your answer is in what caused the issue in the first place. But when she put it in the way of the virus being in the injury, I'm like, I'm digging that, because that's where it is. That's where the malfunction is. That's where the breakdown is. And that's why the virus is still within us. So if we, as a people who are injured and infected already, try to use culture out of context, right? And we're already infected, instead of building the wall of protection, we're going to build the wall that's going to consume us.
Right.
Because the people who are saying now, I'm bringing forth this culture, are infected.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And we've seen this in closed communities of our brothers and sisters who have decided that this is the place, not realizing that it was in you. This is the place. So if I get away from here and I become the boss and I get in charge and I make the rules, then things will be better. And history has shown us, I'm talking about recent history has shown us that that's not the case, because the virus is in you.
Right. Right.
So
we say all the time, we are the people. We always say, well, oh, the people this, the people that. We are the people. We're the people of the book. We forget the people of the book are pretty messed up at times.
Correct. A lot of times.
A whole lot of times. We talked earlier, and to, like you said, it's a current event. And we talked about it in the last episode of Peer Review for You, is that we have real-time examples of women and men coming out saying we were in the place. The place had the culture. The place had all of the things that you are saying we should do. And I was hurt in that space. They hurt me anyway. Culture in place, language in place, all of these things in place, the Edenic diet in place. And, that didn't keep sexual depravity from touching me. Culture is not the cure. If we have it, like you said, and I think it was a great point, that walls work both ways.
Yeah.
We have the wall. We have now. If the wall is Torah, right? That's protection.
Correct.
If the wall is this toxic, out of context, dangerous kind of reclamation of something we don't know anything about,
right,
then as you described, that becomes the thing that contains the virus inside. It locks the virus inside. It has nowhere to escape. It closes all the pores. Remember they tell you sweat it out. You can't sweat it out because you don't close all the pores. Everything that would have allowed the toxin to seep out, to get everything your body would have done to flush out and purge, you have now locked in. Correct. And that's the opposite, because your immune system would have stopped it. It would have blocked it. But then you let it in and then walled it in. And that's what we start to do when we do this kind of maladaptive adopting of things that we don't have any understanding of, any business touching, or any context for. That, again, that's that bad word that nobody really likes. It's context. It's context. The other word people don't like, accountability. We don't like being accountable. We don't like responsibility. We don't like the fact that other people are watching. We don't like the fact that other people are checking for us. We don't like the fact checking. We have on Debate Talk we have a whole new segment called fact checking, because that's important. Fact checking, peer reviewing. These things are important. We have a whole book called what? Judges, for a reason. It's for a reason, because we're a nation of laws. And we are actually a nation of laws. The Most High has expectations of us, and a part of those expectations are that we're going to be accountable to one another, and this is part of that. And part of that.
And believe it or not, it's an expression of love.
Of course.
To hold one another accountable for the things that we say, the things that we say we're supposed to do, the things that we say we're not going to do. Because when we hurt, or when we misinform, or when we misguide one another, that it's going to affect, it's a domino effect. You see what I'm saying? And it's going to spread throughout the community. It's going to cause division. It's going to cause contention. So it's not just a matter of we the people, I have an idea I want to share, and if you don't like it, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? That was a song, by the way. But that's old school. But I'm saying, that's not acceptable any longer, because the people are being hurt, misguided, misled, and then thinking that it's the creator, right? Like, oh yes, I don't want to do this because the creator. Like, whoa, was that the creator, or was that the dude from YouTube? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's keep it 100. That's the. And right now we're in a culture within a culture, and that also exists, a culture within a culture, and we're in the culture of microwave information. We're in the culture of Google scholarship. We're in the culture of not processing for ourselves the information that we're looking to disseminate to the people, because the reason why we're disseminating to the people is for a whole nother reason. And we the people need to understand, because we are the people, right? We the people need to understand that we need to be responsible for what we are allowing into our gates, right? Because the same wall of protection, we have walls of protection around us, and if we allow anything into our gate, then we cause ourselves to be susceptible to being misled. Because the reality is, a lot of us are intellectually lazy, right? We are emotionally unavailable, and we don't want to do the work. And if someone comes and say, "Hey, I did the work for you. You ain't got to do nothing but take this pill, girl. Mister, all you got to do is come on in. I got it for you." And we like, yeah, you know what? You right. This is good. Oh, the good old nation building doctrine. Correct, Malaka. The nation building doctrine is also this thought of culture. Goes back to Jacob. Goes back to Jacob did it, and he nation built again. Wisdom is going to look back and say, yes, this is what Yaakov did. This is the position that Yaakov was put in. This is what happened because of what the position Yaakov was put in. But on the other side, this is also what happened. Contention, confusion, division. You see what I'm saying? Joseph getting sold into slavery. So we can't jealousy. You see what I'm saying? When I looked at, and I went on to say this, and I know I'm going a little bit off, but a little bit on the topic. The other day I was thinking about Demona. There's a lot on my mind, and the Me Too out of Demona. And I think I've had this conversation before, but one of the first times, if not the first time, we see inappropriate sexual behavior that is not necessarily being spoken to, we see it in Yaakov and Dinah. And when you look back at what Yaakov says, when I'm listening to a lot of the stories, it's echoing. Like, you want these? I'm in a foreign land. These dudes don't have my back. We're small in number. Just let it rock. You see what I'm saying? Let it pass. Don't. And then he was actually upset with his sons because you're going to cause me to be a stink amongst the people. So he was thinking about his own safety, the safety of his family. And even though Dinah, you know what I mean? The question, some people go back and forth. Did you get violated? Dinah did. You know, we're not sure, right? Some people say, yes, she was violated. She was taken forcibly. Okay. And so if you subscribe to that, and then you look like, well, why was Yaakov so relaxed about that? Right. Why wasn't he going as hard as his brothers were or his sons were? And then when you look and say, well, Dinah is the daughter of Leah. Could that have played into it? And so we have a lot of his daughters, the sisters and the mothers, like, yo, the response I was looking for, I didn't get. You got to cover it up, man. Get over it. And I'm like, when we talk about the first Israelite, because she's the first Israelite woman, right? The first Israelite woman in the nation, which is Dinah, was violated. And then we have a culture.
3 generations.
Yeah, we have a culture of Israelite women expressing in certain spaces that they don't feel protected.
Right.
And that when they are violated, there isn't retribution. When they are violated, there isn't justice served. And we're how many millennia later, and we have the same cry.
Right.
It's something to think about. I was just thinking about. I just want to throw that out there because I was thinking about the other day, like, and further. And one more thing, if she had a nation, if she had 12 brothers and she was the only sister, what provision was being made for her to be fruitful and multiply?
Right.
What provisions was made for Dinah? Because you're in a foreign land. You see Judah goes off. He was like, he's going to get him a shorty. Reuben, he goes out of his mind. He goes and does wildness, right? But there's no conversation. Dinah doesn't even speak in the text in her own voice.
Right. Right. The first time we see a daughter speaking out, because even with the situation with Lot and his daughters, the situation with in the book of Judges with the concubine, she doesn't get to speak because she dies. But the next time we hear someone speaking, and again we find this polygyny environment, is with the other Tamar, with David's daughter. And once again, the female principal gets sacrificed on the altar of the masculine image, because Amnon is the heir apparent. He's the next in line. And so no matter what sexual depravity he has committed, Tamar is just, out of luck. And so absolutely. And so what we see what happens with that, they don't have the same mother. So he immediately, like, he starts to be able to justify all of the sexual depravity. She's not my full sister. He says that. He goes, and it's interesting that the language in the text goes back and forth. And I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but it's interesting to see how he starts to vocalize her kinship ties with him. That's Absalom's sister, right? Sometimes she's my sister. I'm so in love with her. I'm sick in my heart of love for her. And then sometimes she's Absalom's sister. And so we get to see that kind of back and forth that Amnon does. Again, being able to justify this kind of sexual depravity. Once again, she's the only one who says, don't do this thing to me. Like you said, Dinah, however we pronounce that, is silent in her own defense. Lot's daughters don't say anything about being sacrificed in order to once again preserve the masculine host. We don't see any justification in Judges. We see it with Tamar. We see the first princess, because Micah's a pretty strong sister too, but Micah doesn't get sexual. Well, I don't know, sis. We can make an argument that Micah gets sexually violated and that she gets immediately abandoned by David, and David doesn't come back until he needs her.
Yeah, that would be some conjecture, sister. We're not gonna read that into the text. But here's the question.
That's what happened.
To bring it back home, here's the question. Since we're talking about culture versus Torah, and we see that custom, which is under the umbrella of culture, and that there, if we have more than one situation where one could make an argument that this is the custom, is it Torah? This is one of these customs that we see in more than one space where a daughter is violated, and what the Torah says about when you get violated doesn't happen. The Torah says if you get violated, this is the procedure. If she cries out, the procedure that was supposed to happen for Tamar in the case of Amnon was Absalom. The brother was now Amnon's supposed to get dealt with. And when Absalom started going for that head, Dawid is like, what in the world is going on? Dawid is protecting the violator. We saw this, we're seeing this in present day, where the violator, because they have standing in certain spaces, is being protected, and the victim is being told to hold that. Is this customary? Because it's not Torah.
We see Malaka weighing in. Malaka says, Torah intermingles with the one who meditates on it, intermingles with the one who meditates on it and becomes the immune system, and also regenerates new spiritual DNA. I love that. She says that Torah becomes the immune system and also regenerates new spiritual DNA. That was great. She also says that in the New Testament, Torah is described as alive, active, and transformative. Not culture, but Torah.
Thank you for that. That takes us back to right when we internalize Torah, it changes who we are as a people at our very cellular level. This is why it's something that is not necessarily something like, right, what we do today, because we've been so disconnected, is we spend a lot of time talking about it. It's something that you're supposed to do. You see what I'm saying? And so because we've been disconnected and it's all brand new and it's all shiny and we're trying to understand it before we do it. But Torah is something that once you begin to do it, you will understand it. It's like if I say to my daughter, she'll ask me such and such, and I'll say, just do it. And as she's beginning to do it, she said, now I understand why you said that. Because understanding comes in the future. What we're trying to do is start at the starting line and understand what's going to happen all the way at the finish line. Right. It doesn't work like that. Wisdom is principle. Wisdom comes first, but understanding is in the future. Because in wisdom and knowledge is intermittently, you get little pieces here, you get little pieces there, and you're collecting this knowledge, and you move with wisdom, which is the fear of the Most High. That's wisdom. So when you move in that, when you get to where it is that you have worked through it, you say, okay. And that's where the trust comes in, which we lack greatly as a people. The trust in the Creator to say, you know what? I trust the Most High that I don't know how this is all going to work out, but I trust it's going to work out. Right? And so instead of that, we're putting these little prosthetic things on our spirituality. And it's like, the prosthetics. And we're like, yeah. If we do this, then that's going to ensure this is going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And if we do that, and it's like, but we're not doing, like we said last week, we're not doing our homework. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. If you want to ensure that this is going to happen, why don't you do that? The thing that is subscribed for you to, or prescribed for you to do. Why? Because we still have not come to the point, in my estimation, that we have really made that choice. That choice that Yaakov had to make, the choice that Abraham had to make, the choice that everybody has to make. You see what I'm saying? The choice that Levi make, the choice that Joshua said, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Most High. We still haven't really made that choice. You see what I'm saying? So we're still trying to pontificate about the joint all day long. So Sister Mayana, when it says ZCs, what exactly do you think it means? You feel me? And then we could argue about Degalim and ZCs all day. So when you say blue, do you mean Tekelet blue? Or do you mean the sky blue? Or you're like, dude, what is the ZC? What does it represent?
Right. And that's custom. That is custom. That is tradition. And it becomes, but it's not, because the law only said it had to be blue. And
Correct.
so custom comes in and says, or what tradition, not custom, but tradition comes in and says, well, in that time period, only this kind of blue was available, or only this kind of blue was possible. So since that's what was familiar, that's
Right.
what was accessible, that's the blue you must use because that's the blue that they use.
Yeah. There we
But they
go.
use that blue because that's all they had. It's not
Correct.
because the Lord said to put this form. Now, mind you, Torah has formulas. Torah will tell you use this spice, this oil, don't use it anywhere else when it wants to. But Torah doesn't say anything about there being a formula for the blue. So this argument over what the blue looks like, which blue is good, that's
You know what I heard, sis? It's the blue from the bottom of the sea, from a
yeah,
certain kind of
from
fish,
the unclean shellfish. I heard.
from the unclean shellfish,
I
from
heard. Or
nobody
the
has
snail.
seeds on. And this is why the European Jew doesn't have blue in his zits because you can't find it.
Yeah, they don't know which snail it was. They gotta hunt down the snail with
And
the
we say all that to say, hopefully this was helpful. I found it helpful in just taking a look at and reassessing a lot of the things. Take up that, please. A lot of the things that we do and subscribe to, that we argue over, to see if this is what we're really supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Is this what this is really about? Are we missing the essence of Torah? Do we really understand Torah? And I think the way it's being taught, just sitting, and Mayana can tell you, I'll be sitting in a cut just watching everything. Like, this is interesting. Because I want to be informed when I'm talking. And the way we are receiving it, the way a lot of the teachers are sharing it, I don't his experience has shown me that they don't really even understand the differences, and that we are putting on Torah and making customs and culture trump Torah. And anytime we do that, because they're coming from the human mind, the human desire, the human intellect, we're going to run into problems because because we really want it. It's like, and I have to go back to the P word one more time, because in the world we have people who wanted to have multiple partners, male or female. When they come into this space, boom, custom is Torah. Because I don't want to let that go.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you telling me? I don't want to let that go. There's a law that tells me I could actually do it. And
Right.
this is the law for a lot of people. And when you begin to sit down and talk to them, they'd be like, oh, you was like that before you knew that you could do that.
Correct.
Now
Or what
you
you
have
thought
a
you
reason.
could do. Right.
You see, now you have a reason. And so we have to be careful about what's really, and it's getting late, so we're going to wind down. We're going to have to be careful about what we already want to do and the excuses we look for to do them,
Correct.
and pass it off as our righteousness. Sister Mina, what's your closing thoughts?
Well, I wanted, since you brought up the P word again.
I didn't mean to. Y'all, please forgive me.
No, but it's still germane to the topic. It's still apropos, and here's why: polygyny does, and very often it's tied to the continent and to all these other spaces. Again, out of context. Again, if you go to litbomb.com, we have several articles on the P word and other things. But for example, if you take this polygyny concept and put it back into, and I hope Okweti is still around because I would love for him to weigh in on this, that on the continent where polygyny is practiced, there are cultural markers also still in place that actually do regulate it and that actually put things in place that protect the woman. It's not that the dude wants to go in and dabble with polygyny and then when he's done, it's like, that's what you want to do. What you doing? I mean, I'm done. So, you hanging out, you breaking out, like what's really good, because there's no protection for her in this polygyny conversation that they have imported into Israel without bringing anything else with it. Just like, oh, look at the continent. They're doing that on the continent. We want to do it over here too. Like the continent is one block and it's run by Pookie over on the continent too. Pookie and them over on Kenya Street. It's not happening. And again, the articles that we've written on Lip Balm really dig into these things, dig into the language. I did an entire study there on polygyny. One of the features we said earlier of culture is language. And many anthropologists will tell you that language is is one of the ways to, it's like the treasure trove, or the place where culture is seated, that you can learn a lot about a culture just by interrogating the language, which is why one of the one of the disciplines under anthropology is linguistics, because we understand what kind of the way that language retains the culture. His name is there's a linguist, and his name is Sapir. Edward Sapir, I believe, and he said that language is basically like the encyclopedia of culture. I'm paraphrasing, but he says like the encyclopedia of culture. Anyway, so because of that fact, I was able to do a study, and it was called. Imona, do you remember the article that I wrote? My Partner in Jealousy. That's what it was called. My Partner in Jealousy. And the reason I named the article My Partner in Jealousy is because I did a search. I did some research. I did a word study for co-wife. Because everybody tells us, oh, you're only jealous because you have a Western mind frame. If you lived on the continent, you wouldn't think that way. I looked at a dozen, maybe about a dozen different languages on the continent and in other spaces that have polygyny as part of their current practice. And I found that in the language, the word for co-wife was things like my partner in jealousy, enemy, adversary. These are not people that love the other woman. Okay, this idea that the women are all getting along and jealousy is not an issue there is disproven simply by the way they call each other, what they say to each other, the way they address each other. So it's really hard to make an argument that all of these on the continent, they're not struggling with sharing, or that they don't understand that this other woman is impeding on resources or affection with the man, because she literally calls her the adversary or my partner in jealousy. If you're interested in that study, it's on Litbom. It's called My Partner in Jealousy, and you'll see a list of all of what they're called in the language, the different parts of Africa. It's like I went to Ghana, Nigeria, all these different places and these different languages, and what these other women are called and how that gets dealt with in all of these spaces where the men will tell you this doesn't exist. They also fail to tell you that in some of these African cultures where polygyny is practiced, these are not patrilineal spaces. Some of them are matrilineal, which means the line gets passed through the woman. We're patrilineal. Israel is patrilineal, patrilocal, and patriarchal. So we talked earlier about not being able to fit something in every cubbyhole. You can't just pick something up and stick it over here when now all the context has changed. Yeah, you can't ask women in Israel to accept something that doesn't even work that way in the culture you're comparing it to. But that comes with research, and the problem is they don't expect you to ask questions. They don't expect you to research, and that's how we get this kind of cognitive. They perform this kind of cognitive trick on us. It's a cognitive trick, and they don't expect us to.
We called Monty, sis. We called Monty.
Yeah, so it's like, yo, can you find it? The hand is apply the hand on you. And the idea is to mesmerize you with these terminologies. While we were able to go ahead and pick up the breadcrumbs to this cultural immunity idea, or culture as the immune system idea, and say, okay, where did that phrase live before it came over here? What is it really about? What was she saying? And it's again, I think we're going to give you the video link also. Go back and listen to what this anthropologist does. She gives you a definition. She's telling you what part of the definition you're supposed to think about when you're looking at it as the immune system. You're supposed to be looking at it as a defense. Now you go back and say, is that what Israel does? Because she's again, Mona told you, her specialty is Africology, right? And once again, Africa is not one block. It's not one block. You cannot assume that everything on the continent is something you're supposed to do. Even those who are still on the continent will tell you a lot of the things that they did they weren't supposed to do. A lot of the things they adopted because they were still there, they weren't supposed to do, but they did. Right? So we have to really be willing to not be stimulated, not be excited by everything that's shiny. And whenever somebody comes and, ooh, I brought you something new, here's a new trinket, and then all of us kind of respond to what's new and what's shiny without saying, yo, where'd you get that? All right, where'd you get that from? Amuna has, remember the example that you always give about picking up something that other people have put out.
What's that?
The idea that, we're trying to bring inside what all these other people have thrown outside. This is garbage to them now. They have rejected it for themselves, right. And we're picking it up like, ooh, this is great.
And that has to do with our injury. See, this is why you ain't gonna escape it. It has to do with our disconnect from who we are, our susceptibility. There's a story of a duck or something, or it's not a duck. It's another animal following around the mother duck and keeps saying, "Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Are you my mother?" You know what I'm saying? You remember that story? So there's a story. The children's story about this animal trying to find its home, trying to find its space, because I don't want us leaving to think that all things about culture and who we are and how we express ourselves is bad. It becomes that way when it's contrary to Torah.
Right.
Because Torah does give us the space. It says, put on your border of blue. The Most High tells Aharon and his sons how to dress, but it's not in every single, like, oh, you have to wear white every day, all day. Or you have to wear black every day, all day. Torah doesn't do that. It gives you the space to be human and to express yourself through speech, through music. You know what I'm saying? Through art, as long as you don't make any graven images and don't bow down to them. You see how it affected art? Right there in the commandments is affecting art, because one would say, what are you talking about? This is art. And Torah says, hey, don't make no graven images and do not bow down to them. No worship them. You see what I'm saying? And so right there in that culture, if you go into a culture, that's why you see within Islam, you see patterns. You see what I'm saying? You'll see this beautiful architecture that's patterns because they subscribe to the portion that says make no images. You see what I'm saying? But you may go to another. So that affects now their culture. When you go and you be like, okay, I know that this is an Islamic structure. How do you know that? Because it's form and it's function and and they're governed by a body of laws that tells them how they're supposed to act. When you walk into a place and they see you, they'll be like, oh, wow, okay. Why? Based on how you speak, based on how. So we're not demonizing culture. What we're saying is that just picking up anything that looks, oh, yes, that look nice. You go to the, I was saying you go to the what a place name, the thrift store, and somebody done got rid of it. Cleanse their house, cleanse their space, all kind of stuff could have been on it. You know what I mean? Spirits, who knows what could have been on it? Because a lot of these things, there's laws within the Torah that say when you go to war, certain spaces and certain things you don't even touch. Don't bring no. And I believe it was, who was it that took the garment and brought it back? I have to remember. He took the garment and he brought it back. And it was like, yo, I told you, don't bring nothing. Don't touch nothing. Don't bring nothing. Because we have to understand the other level of spirituality, that certain spirits attach to physical items. And so depending on what the people were doing, wherever the individual is, let me get that so y'all know I'm not blowing smoke.
It wasn't Gideon.
Gideon makes the ephod, which they later on begin to worship. Right. So go ahead. Hold ahead, Sister Mayana. Hold it down for me while I go get this portion about in some spaces we're not to touch anything. And it had a lot to do with the men when they went in more, and there certain places nothing was supposed to be brought back.
Because brought back whole women and madness. Was it who brought back women from Ammon and Moab, and they weren't supposed to do that?
Well, I know that there was Moabite. There was the interface between the women of Moab, which was the Baal Peor situation in the wilderness.
They brought back Cosby and them.
Right, Cosby, which was the Moabitess princess, which the whole thing just went down behind her. And here he comes pimping through the camp with Cosby.
Right.
And this is where Pincus, he jumps up with the spear, like, what in creation are you doing? Like,
Right.
you see what happened?
Right.
And these are the stories and situations that I personally find a value in really assessing, like, what were you thinking, honey? You know what I'm saying? What was really going through your mind? Like, were you here? Were you present when everybody just got jacked up behind this stuff? Like, do you care? Because that same mentality is what plagues us today. We see what happens to other people and we're stiff-necked. We don't take it as a warning. We don't, like I had the babies listen today, the story of Jonah, right? And Jonah's in his feelings after he's like, tell them to repent, and they do. Like, Jonah, why are you in your feelings after they already did what you said they're supposed to be doing? That's the type of people we are. It's like, say sorry. I'm sorry. Why you have to say sorry? You know what I'm saying? Like, which one do you want? Will you want me to be mad or you want me to say sorry? Like, what you want? That spiritual part of us, for some reason, more than other spaces, the monks will be disciplined. Even for whatever they're worshiping, they will put themselves on the top of a rock, you feel me, and sit up there meditating for 12 hours a day and find some space within them to be disciplined. But when you come to our people, discipline is like a curse word. What did you say? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the Most High says, are you a homeborn slave, Israel? What is wrong with you? You know what I mean? How many times must you be chastised? And the wild, crazy thing is, we're back. And like, we come back like baby's kids. Like, why are we coming back like baby's kids, Sister Bayana? I'm sorry, it's getting late. I have questions. Like,
you baby's kids? That was Robin.
I know, yeah. Like, we don't die, we multiply. We come back like baby's kids, still misbehaving. We could tell you what happened. Like, I think I remember. We come back out of wherever we came from, and then came back and didn't miss a beat. So you're just gonna pick up right there. You're just not gonna bethink yourself. You see what I'm saying? You're gonna do the same thing Eli's sons were doing, which was ministering to the people, and thought that it was your personal pot for feel up. Like, that's what you're gonna do right now. This is what we're doing as a people. Right. That the men in many positions are doing the very same thing that Eli's sons did.
Right.
Even after you read the story of what happened to them.
And we have to be careful. A lot of these leaders or so-called leaders or self-appointed leaders and teachers and the like are forgetting that these are not your people. These are the Most High's people. And even in Shlomo, when he was asking for understanding and was given both understanding and wisdom, he said, because who can judge these your people? These are your people. I mean, he understood. He was being appointed as king. He still understood these were not his people. These are the Most High people. Moshe said, I don't want it. Did I give them suck? Did I give birth to them? I don't. These are your people. But we have leaders in the community that are acting like they need to hoard the people. They're not your people. And until we understand that these are the people of the Most High, that we don't have the proper perspective, the proper fear. We don't, reverence. Right, you need that fear. Because if you think these are your people, then where's your accountability?
Only the Most High could. And this is, and I know we're going a little bit off topic, but as the Spirit leads, this is the area where it gets very sticky. As Sister Marianne is saying, the thought is hoard the people unto yourself. This is amongst many leaders, but only the Most High can judge me because I'm above accountability. There's no culture. There's no council of elders, because if the elders say anything, I'll just go rogue on them and just go over here and start something else, right? And all of the damaged souls that's behind me, that's their fault because I didn't tell them to follow me. And then you have this cycle. And so,
sorry,
what happened?
No, the sister put in the box. It was Robin Harris, and I got excited. Yes, it was Robin Harris.
Robin Harris, Bebe's kids. Yeah. We ought not to behave like Bebe's kids. You know what I'm saying? And so it's a level of, you know what? We're not beyond our foreparents if we're coming to the same stumbling block and falling anyway.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, they fell over that. I wonder what got into them. Oh, I think it's the nakash, it's the ego. You know what I'm saying? They started to think that they was in the stead of the Most High. It's very easy, and I'll leave it at this because it's 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
The danger of coming into this space of ministering to the people is that once you go up, especially in real time, on what they call the pulpit, in the Hebraic term is the bema, right? Mm-hmm. Once you are elevated and you go up to this high space in the sight of the people, that can begin to get to the individual's mind. And quickly they go from brother such and such to sister such and such to call me, you know, something illustrious, grand poobah of all things ever, right? Yeah. And we, the people, are the ones who are also in danger of empowering the individual to think that they are in the stead of the Creator. So instead of seeking or beseeching the Most High or approaching people as brothers and sisters, we don't use our brain, we don't use our thinking capacity, and everything we depend on. So what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And what are your thoughts on this? Okay, I'm just going to accept that. And they're like, oh, wow, they just took that? You know what I'm saying? They just accepted that? Okay, next time they come, I'm going to say something more wild. And next thing you know, I feel empowered because it's empowering. This is how they make stars.
Yes.
Yeah. They make icons, they make idols. How do you do that? You get the public to agree with that which they are saying without contesting what they are saying. Yep. Whatever I put out, that's what you get. That's not Amuna saying that. I'm just saying. Because if I put out something wild, you know what I'm saying? Come check the kid. Like, yo, that was crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. Yo, sis, where did you get that from?
Right.
Because I'm going to do it. Ask Mayana. I'll be like, oh, so where you got that from? You know what I'm saying? So you know what I mean? So the same thing I expect that I practice so that, because I don't want to see someone go off. If I see someone going in the wrong direction, I'll pull the coattail discreetly. Be like, yo, you sure about that? If they tell me, yeah, I'm good, I'll be like, all right. But that's Torah. We have to warn one another. Do not, because if you don't, then the blood is on your head. But right. If you call your brother, that's Torah once again. So then Torah becomes custom. Do you see what I'm saying? Because the Torah says, don't sit there and watch them go off and don't say nothing.
Right.
You go say something, you say it in love, but you say something and don't watch their faces. If they don't take it, just be like, yo, at least I warned you. Right. That is our duty to humanity. That is our duty to one another. That is our duty to our brothers and sisters. And unfortunately, a lot of our sisters don't take the warning. I'm gonna have to say it, Sister Miami. We as sisters, myself included, back in the day, because of our injury, we cannot hear what is being said to us. And then we don't take the warning till after the beating.
Right.
And then we're like, you got a minute? And you're like, oh, what happened now? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then we have to console, but we also have to be honest about how we got into the space to begin with. And unfortunately, a lot of us, we want the consolation, but we don't want to be honest about what caused us to get in the predicaments that we are in. Has that been your experience, Sister Mayana? Or am I just tripping all by my onesie?
Okay, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, now. We went off topic, but anywho.
Thank you for sticking with us as we go all over the place.
No, we're back now. So closing thoughts, or do you want to closing thoughts?
I want to see. Yeah, I do want us to wrap up. We're already after the 12 o'clock hour, but I would like to know if there's anything that the people in the audience. We always try to bring the audience in and see what their thoughts are. If you guys didn't want to play with our, can you guess the P words? Can you guess the C words? So I don't know if you're going to be quiet on this too, but if you guys don't have any thoughts, then yeah, we can go ahead and wind down.
We see Sister Esther saying, that's right. Thank you, sisters, for correction. If you truly love your sisters, you will help and correct them in love. And that's, that's what it's about. You know what I mean? That's what, some of this information, it's after the horse is already through the gate.
Right.
A lot of times, but it's never too late for those who are coming to at least have better information than we did. You know what I mean? Because a lot of this information was coming from its culture.
I mean, the immune system activates when the danger is there. right?
Correct.
So this is we try to do preventative stuff. We do a lot of preventative giving out of information. We do try to anticipate some of your questions. We find that very often, we do full episodes or we do broadcasts or we do counsel, and then we get, oh, that's the best advice I ever heard, or oh, I didn't know Torah said that, and I'll never, I'm not gonna fall for that. And then the D gets introduced to the conversation, and it's like, yeah, well, Mayana and Moon ain't got no D, so and then they go in pursuit of this other pleasure, only to return with, okay, so what does Torah have to say about the predicament that I found myself in? And sometimes, it's like, you don't have a Torah problem. I don't have a Torah solution for you. Like, this is not a Torah problem. This is even Torah, and I guess I can end on this. Even Torah makes a distinction between intentional sin, rebellion, and the things that we do without meaning to deliberately rebel. But Torah makes that distinction. So that comes into play when you know better. And some of this stuff we're doing on purpose.
But and here's the thing, because now you're going into another area. See, we're gonna have to come back. Some of the things that we're doing on purpose, right? We have been programmed. It's an impulse, right? And a lot of us were in a space or are in a space that we have not yet learned to control that impulse. And so you have that fall 7 times, but get back up. Like, because this is the injury, this is the area that I have not yet learned to control. You got the Paul syndrome. I would that, but I do, but I can't. You know what I mean? You got that whole situation going on right there. Like, I want to stop myself, and then when you look back, you're like, why did I just do that?
Right.
And that's humanity. That's the human element of, I know better, but I still did it anyway.
Right.
And it's how to get through there. That's where a lot of people are stuck at, because intellectually I know, but because we have not learned to govern the lower sense, man, this is where it's coming from. The will, the sexuality, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The right to exist, which is the root system, our food, our clothes, our shelter, feeling like we belong. In these spaces where there's injury, there is a stronger impulse than there is the intellect knowing. I knew I shouldn't have ate that donut. Why the backside did I eat that donut? You feel me? You know something, you do stuff like that. Men do stuff like that. Women do stuff like that. I knew I should stop gossiping and backbiting, but your mouth starts opening and the stuff starts coming out. And then the person's like, well, how do I stop that?
Right.
Therein lies the problem. Therein lies, and then Most High, please forgive me. Most High, please forgive me. And this is where the knowledge of self, know thyself, and these you have to begin to change. I was talking about it on Facebook the other day. There's this, you have to get into the business of changing yourself. You see what I'm saying? You have to get into the business of rewiring your mind, reprogramming yourself, building new neural pathways, building new reward systems for certain behavior. That's the work. Right. This Israel has not. We have not really Hebrews, because Ivri means to cross over.
Right.
We have not really crossed over. Right. We're still over here. We know about over here. We just don't know how to get over there and stay over there. Right. We might go over there for a hot second. Right. Next thing you know, be like, ah, man, it look real good back over there. You know what I'm saying? Next thing you know, we be trying to move back.
Nah. We sitting here we see very often. We're trying to be like the Northern Kingdom. We had this conversation that.
Oh no, you did, Sister Mariana.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. What are you doing?
Okay, that's a whole new conversation. No. I was talking. I wasn't gonna talk. I wasn't going to bang on. What was it? Be greasy about the Northern Kingdom. I was just going
to love, y'all. We said in love and love.
I was just going to point out that
you about to Crisco, don't Crisco them, man.
I was just going to point out that according to scripture, that when the first king of the Northern Kingdom was faced with the fact that there were going to be upcoming holidays where the people were accustomed to, because it was the custom, and they were accustomed to going to Jerusalem to worship. But the king understood that going back to somewhere familiar to do something familiar over in the Davidic dynasty, spaces could incite something in the people. So what he did was he created something convenient. Don't go over there, stay over here. I guess in a way it kind of goes back to this idea of putting up walls to contain something bad. Right? Because now he goes and he says, don't go to Jerusalem. Don't do what we've done all the time to worship our Elohim, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. Yeah, I don't want you to do that. Stay over here. I'll build something you can look at. And he builds, like, we get the calves again, right? We have a local um a local deity that we don't have to travel, we don't have to go and do the things we used to do, and there's no fear of power leaving the king of the northern kingdom and possibly being subjected to, I don't know, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh over there in the southern kingdom, right? So don't go over there. Stay over here where we have this thing. The sisters are talking about the fact that they too have experience where good counsel is being ignored because the sister in these cases aren't prepared or in a place where they can receive it, and they want to pass the buck on to others. Sister Malaka concurs and says that she's had many frustrating conversations with a similar age group. We're talking about 20s, 30s.
Right.
They prefer to listen to each other and not their elders. That's a different conversation. Because that's going to remind me that I've been seeing all of these comments lately where they're banging on sisterhood. Don't talk to the sisters. Very weird. Another way of kind of isolating the person, separating them from the elders, separating them from any counsel that might run counter to a narrative that a particular type of man is trying to forward. And so you have a particular type of female that is invested in the approval of that certain type of man and will forward this counter is, again, it's countercultural. It's countercultural not to seek the feminine principle as a woman to find wisdom about how to comport yourself as a woman. Like, you get that from other women. That's where you get it from. So it's a very interesting conversation. They want consolation. I like that Malaka says this. They want consolation without correction.
That's correct.
That is correct.
That's exactly what's happening. And hopefully the more we bring it to light, the more we examine what we possibly are doing wrong that could be contributing to where we find ourselves. Hold on, the baby's waking up. The more we go drink some water, baby. The more we sorry, who's on the him for?
We got Alan Under the Palm Show. This is just to remind the people that you are listening to Under the Palm.
Where does sound come from?
Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak. Doing a little cross promotion between peer review for you and debate talk for you. Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak.
Correct. Now the sister made me remember. She says, Evelyn says, sis, I just stopped talking and she wouldn't shut up. And she said that God knows her heart. And I said, you have to study. She told me she doesn't. I pray my son don't marry this child. And it's again, these are the places where we can work on ourselves, because when culture comes back into place, if the people are not ready to receive correction, the people are not ready to follow instruction, we are not ready to govern ourselves. If that happens, it doesn't matter how much you proclaim to have Torah or you proclaim to have culture, it's going to end up into everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. You see what I'm saying? That's where it ultimately has ended up. That's where it was since the time before we got into Egypt, to leaving Egypt. All of these stories that we see popping up in the Tanakh, and I know we keep winding down. All of these stories have to do with the human experience. If we take nothing else from them, we argue about this, we argue about that. But if we can't see the humanity in the stories and really begin to weed out within us the things that would cause us, or at least begin to govern what will cause you to hate your sister in your heart, What would cause you to hate your brother in your heart? As in the case of Cain and Abel. As in the case of something I'm being rejected. Cain and Abel's story, and if you look at it on the surface, there's rejection that looks to he internalized that rejection and then in turn projected it on his brother. That it wasn't his behavior, like Evelyn is saying, it's not my behavior that's causing the issue. It's you, because if you wasn't here, then I would be accepted. That's something that still exists within humanity today. That's something that causes family rifts. That's something that causes friends breakdown. That's something that causes communities to dismantle. That instead of us taking a look at ourselves, because the ego, as a protective mechanism, it causes us in many cases to insulate ourselves, to say that it can't be us. It can't be something that's wrong with us. It has to be the other person. This is a normal reaction. It's not me. This is, I guess it's abnormal that has now become normalized. The norm, that it's not me. It has to be everyone else. And so that's the instinct, to say that it's everyone else. And so the reflection, the soul work, is to say, okay, it can't be everyone else. Everywhere that I go, somebody is saying this thing, and the scenery keeps changing, and the only person that's the same is me. It can't be everyone else. It has to be something that I'm contributing to make people perceive me in this way. But in the case of Cain and Abel, his offering was rejected. He turned and looked, and he projected the rejection on his brother. So he in turn rejected his brother. And he wanted to, the source of his pain or the source of his displeasure, he wanted to silence that. And he went to the extent of taking his brother out. And we do that on a day-to-day basis by not acknowledging our shortcomings, but looking to dim the light of others, so that we can shine brighter. The Cain and Abel situation is still here. If we look at every shortcoming that the Torah has left on record, we can see what plagues us as humanity today. And there's a roadmap of what we need to do, instead of something that is very, very far away from us. And we need all of these special scuba type gear to go and find out the answers. What is troubling you? You know what I'm saying? What are you stumbling over? What's the issue that you have going on with you? What are you trying to find out from the Creator? Is it something that you already know? You just don't want to, because a lot of times when we come to seek counsel, oh, Sister Man is back. Well, a lot of times when we come to seek counsel, we already know the answer. Let's keep it 100. We just don't want to admit we know the answer. We want somebody else to tell us the answer so that we could reject it and act like that's not the answer. Sister Mana, have you ever come for counsel and you already knew the answer, what you needed to do, and then you fronted like you didn't know what you needed to do so you could hear somebody else say it, only so you could reject it?
Right.
Tell me we don't do that.
It happens all the time.
So these are the games that we play as humanity. These are the games that we play around with the Creator, when instead of being like, you know what, let me buckle down. And it comes out through our interactions with people. It comes out through our interactions with community. It comes out with our interactions with society at large and with nature. Are you the person who was like, oh yeah, I see an anthill. Hey, anthill. Boom, you just kick the anthill over. You're not in danger. The anthill didn't do you nothing. The anthill was minding his business, and you so destructive as a person, you just want to kick it over for no reason. You have to be like, yo, why did I just do that?
Right.
I say to the children, like, yo, why did you just do that? I don't know. Okay, you need to go think about that.
Right.
Or do you feel bad when you see people smile? Like, does it cause you physical pain? Like, why are they smiling? You know what I'm saying? Because that's your problem, not theirs. And then we go around, I don't like that person, Sister Man. She smiled too much. What she always smiling about? You feel me? And this is the stuff that brings static into our, well, we can't get along with the people because we don't like ourselves.
Right.
We do this, we envy, we covetous, we jealous. We do all of these things that's going to cause negative things to come into our space and shut down our connection with our power.
Right.
And then we say, oh, we can't reach our power. Let's get some prosthetics. Why don't you just clear the channel and the avenue so that we can all be connected? Why do we have to get prosthetics when the reality is we all have the ability to be connected, but we don't believe it? Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't know. I went off thing. Okay, no, for real this time.
No. Yeah. I mean, my closing thoughts and my closing is just to kind of direct maybe those who are listening now and will be listening a little later on. Just a reminder that we have several episodes on the Debate Talk for You side and on probably somewhere here also under the palm on a lot of the shows that we did that shows that culture and custom haven't always worked to our advantage. We have, I think, maybe on Amuna's Facebook and not yet here. Maybe we'll discuss it again. The custom of twins being discarded. Only one of the living children being allowed to be discarded. That's a custom or part of the culture. And what was it, India, I believe. The idea that we talked about polygyny as one. Um, we talked about the on Under the Palm we were looking, it was Under the Palm, on Under the Palm we were looking at a woman, a case where a woman got a divorce simply because the dude sent her a text message. Her husband sent her a text message that said, I think, toilet 3 times, and according to custom that was enough for her entire marriage to dissolve. And part of the custom was, in order for her to return to her husband, she had to have sex with another man, and then he could take her back. Really weird. But there was also a Canaanite custom around the time, according to some researchers or some theories, that who tried to make sense of why Judah made the decision to lay with Tamar, or why he looked at Tamar and assumed she was a prostitute. The text does not say she dressed as a prostitute. It says he assumed she was a prostitute. Why would he do that if there was nothing in her attire that suggested that? According to some researchers, Canaan had a custom where women, and you can still read about this because this is an actual thing, and Canaan and other spaces, that before you could get married, another man had to sample the goods. So you would go out and you would sit by the road, and a man will, for whatever token he has on him, give you the business so that you can go and marry your husband. If you couldn't get anybody to lay with you, you couldn't get married. That's custom. That's part of somebody's culture. So we see all of these examples of culture that aren't necessarily a good thing. Going around and just saying, oh, look, it's culture, isn't enough. As Israelites, we have to be vigilant. We have to do what everybody hates that Amuna and I do. It's called diligent inquiry. We've gotten hate mail and hate speech and whole videos about us because we do diligent inquiry. We've made many. We've got anti-fans because of that. But that's Torah. Diligent inquiry, that's Torah. And that's our immune system, Torah.
All right, now. Thank everybody for tuning in. I know we went almost to the 12:30 mark, but yes, Torah is our inoculation. And if Torah, we practice it, it becomes our custom, which becomes integrated within our culture. And if we have a culture that is centered on Torah, then it should be well with our souls. As I said, it shall be well with our souls. So thank everybody for tuning in. This video was done in love. Please, everybody, share love. Reprove in love. You're welcome to the discussion. You're welcome to the conversation always, as long as we're keeping it clean and respectable in the conversation. You're welcome to come on this side of the camera and be on the little panel thingy here and have the discussion if you have something that you would like to add. So feel free to reach out.
Come back next week with this or another segment, Amuna?
Next week is another segment. I believe we have a review that's coming up.
All right.
Yeah, I believe we have a review. So stay tuned next week so that we can have this review. So with that said, everybody have a blessed night. If you have not subscribed, feel free to subscribe. Under the Palm, as well as Debate Talk for You. And if you haven't seen all the videos, which there are a lot of them, look under the description box in the videos. You'll begin to see other things that we have done. And with that, good night, everyone.